then at that point they realize, oh man, we've made a big mistake. And they recognize that they're naked. Why? Why naked? Why does that matter? Because then they recognize their own vulnerability. Before that, they never realized that they were vulnerable because they didn't know evil. They only knew good. And so once they ate of this tree, now they knew that there was good in the world and there was evil in the world. And once you recognize that there's evil in the world and you're vulnerable, you recognize that you're vulnerable to the evil. And what's the evil that they were not aware of before? There was a serpent in the garden. The garden was perfect, except for there was a serpent in the garden. Do you know why I talk to you guys the way that I talk to you? Because there are serpents in the garden. That's why. Because I can sit here and tell you everything is beautiful and wonderful and great and nice. But that's not true, because I know there's a serpent in the garden. I don't know, any of you guys like take care of little nieces and nephews, brothers, sisters? Do you worry about them in the future? You should. I don't mean that to scare you, I mean that because it's true. Why should you be worried about them? Because no matter how much you protect them, no matter what garden you create for them, no matter how perfect everything is that you do for them, some way, somehow, there will be a serpent in the garden. And you can't do anything about that. All you can do is prepare yourself for the serpents that you're going to encounter, because you're going to encounter serpents in your life. No, yeah, it really is, because I've thought about this, so I'm not easily swayed. I have an opinion about something, but it's a deep opinion about something, because I don't just have a feeling, I have a belief, I have reasons, and then therefore the serpent will not be able to shake you. When we're online, you're right, it's easy for us to share our feelings. It's really difficult for us to share our reasons. In other words, how much does it take to share a feeling of outrage, or a feeling of anger, or a feeling of desperation? That's really easy. But if I were to ask you to explain your reasons for something that you deeply believe in, how hard is that? That's way harder, man. And let's face it, most people are not going to sit and read what you wrote, or even kind of watch a video. I mean, even if you watch TikToks, I don't know how we don't have more seizures in this country with all the jump cuts that people plug into their TikToks. And people are even cutting themselves off in mid-sentence now to get to the next sentence. It's like we can't even wait to the next sentence. And what I've noticed throughout all of these is when we say things like, well, that's just how we do things now. Maybe, but then when I talk to the same people, they can't explain reasons for anything. So it might not be a good thing that we do things that way now. My point is that if I were to ask you if you believe in a God, why do you believe in a God? It should take you a while to explain that. If I were to ask you, why do you believe in a devil? You might say, just look at all the evil in the world. That's it, just a few words. And then people will nod and go, yeah. It's almost like to explain the things that are deeply important to us takes a long time. It takes a lot of attention. And that's a shame, because that means that the attention that we have to put into it, well, we have to care enough to put attention into it. And it's almost like people don't care enough about our reasons for why we believe in the things that we hold most deeply and most dearly, but we do care about the things that we're angry about. Like anger is some kind of a badge of honor. You know? I often see that. There are people who will treat the sarcastic person as though they're intelligent. And you'll see this in movies and TV as well, where they'll portray the person who's smart as being sarcastic and short-tempered and all that. And there's nothing smart about being sarcastic, because how hard is it to tear things down? It's really easy. You guys know the Mona Lisa, the painting? Anybody know how long it took to paint that? Yeah, me neither. But I imagine it took a long time. Now, how long do you think it would take to destroy the Mona Lisa?
It's like
Seconds. That thing could have taken years to paint. Maybe even just taken months, even if it was just months to paint it. But how long does it take to destroy it? Seconds. How long does it take to build a building? Years. yeah. How long does it take to bring it down with planes? Seconds. Literally 11 seconds. It doesn't take long to tear things down, man. Like I'm thinking of, have you guys ever seen the statue of David by Michelangelo? Yeah. If I put it up on the screen, you probably know what it was. It took the guy years to make this thing. It's one of the most perfect statues ever made. The thing stands on its own, which statues before him didn't do. You had to have some kind of a prop or some kind of a thing to support it. This dude built a statue that stands on its own. It's unreal, and the proportions on this thing are perfect. When you look at the marble, it looks like skin. It's so incredibly smooth. And then someone took a sledgehammer to it and knocked it down in just a couple of seconds. It doesn't take much to tear things down. And so I don't know why we lift up that sarcastic person as though they're intelligent because they can tear something down. Ooh, congratulations. You know, any 7-year-old can tear things down. But to build something up, man, that's difficult, that's hard. But that's also why it's meaningful. How long does it take to build up trust? How long does it take to destroy trust? How long does it take to build up a meaningful relationship? How long does it take to destroy it? You know, building things up, and that's hard, and that's why they're so meaningful to us. And that's why we have to be careful what we invest our time in, because we only have so much time. And so when you build something up, then you got to protect it. You got to be careful with it, because it only takes you a few seconds to destroy that thing, man. And perhaps that's the thing that separates gods and devils. Yeah. What is it for God to be God? If he were to exist, what would it take? There's one attribute that makes God God. And all religions share this. What does God do? Creates. He creates. And in these texts, the devils, they spend all of their existence trying to destroy and tear down what's been created. And that's a metaphor, man. Whether you believe in it or not doesn't matter. What matters is that we understand that it's a metaphor, that there are gods who create, there are humans who create, and then there are devils who seek to destroy what's been created. Almost never to replace it with something, and even if they replace it with something, what they're replacing it with is chaotic. In other words, God is the one who comes along and takes chaos and makes order out of it. And the devils are the ones who take order and try to make chaos out of it. And this is why, what does the Joker say? I'm an agent of chaos. That's what the Joker seeks to do, seeks to destroy, never to build, never to create. Even in that context there, Batman, yeah, he's destroying limbs and he's destroying faces, but in the process, he's trying to maintain what presently is, which is order. As thin as that order is in Gotham, that's what he's trying to maintain. And that's why we admire him. We admire the people who can take chaos and make order out of it. And if you can't do that, hopefully at least you can maintain order. And that's the neutral stance. The positive stance in the world is the person who creates. The neutral stance is the person who can maintain what's been created. The negative stance is the person who comes along and destroys. And we can all name people like this. There are people, there's no surprise that people who are sarcastic tend to tear down and destroy, and then they tend to do those kinds of things in their lives. People who are sarcastic, I'll tell you one thing I have found, very rarely do they ever dance. They are not dancers. They're usually not musicians. They're usually not people who can create. You'll find that the people who create typically are optimistic. They're optimists. You might, even if they're creating out of a place of pain and sadness and anger, they're taking all that pain and sadness and anger, the chaos, that's all of that, and they're making something beautiful out of it. They're making something with order. This is what musicians do. They go out and they take these 12 notes that exist out there in the ether, they pull them down, they arrange them in such a way that they make a beautiful melody. They take the chaos and they put it into order in a way that we can appreciate, in a way that makes sense to us. And so the world is full of these people who create, people who maintain, and people who destroy. And you need to be careful of the people who destroy, because they're never going to replace it with anything useful. They're going to replace it with something ugly. Even the people who, if you're in a relationship and someone comes in to tear that apart, very rarely do they replace it with something beautiful. Happens, I suppose. But typically they come along and they replace it with something chaotic. And this is why people are left worse off afterwards, oftentimes. So, you figure out which of these things you are. Are you a creator, are you a maintainer, or are you a destroyer? And the problem is most people who are destroyers wake up in the morning and they don't realize that they are. They don't mean to be. They just are. In a very stupid sense, but in a real sense. That person who forgot to turn left earlier on the street, so they cut across traffic and they jam up all the traffic at the red light because you're not turning just yet. That's the person who jams up traffic all the way behind them and then just sits there and is like, oh, my bad. Rather than just go straight and turn left around and take your L because you messed up. That's a person who creates chaos on the streets. Because, they're not sitting there going like, that's right, I'm a devil destroying what's been created. But they definitely are taking the order of the roads, the lanes, the rules, the flow of traffic, and they're creating disorder out of it. They're creating chaos out of it. And so we can also think of it as metaphors for people who make the world worse, even if they don't intend to. Because to do good in the world, it isn't a natural thing for us. Because by nature, what are we? We're selfish, we're self-seeking. And this is why we have to tame ourselves to become the positive things. It's one of the reasons that we admire people who are positive, because we recognize that that's not what we are by nature. When someone comes along and they're really kind and they're really loving and they're really forgiving and they're really appreciative, we realize intuitively that that's a person who probably wasn't born that way. And even if they were born a little bit that way, they've managed to maintain that attitude towards life despite all of its tragedies, despite the world as it really is. So they cultivate that goodness, and that's why we appreciate it. It's like if someone's born that way, we just shrug our shoulders and we're like, nah, that's just how they, that's just how they are. We don't really appreciate it, and we shouldn't, because it isn't something they've chosen to be. It's one of the reasons that you can go to a gym and you can see people who are in great shape and go, that's pretty dope, that guy's jacked. Why? Because you didn't pop out of the womb that way. You built that. And then, of course, someone might come along and destroy it with a cheeseburger or something. So, work to cultivate those things in us that are godlike. What does God do? God creates. God forgives. He's loving. What do devils do? Devils destroy. They never let you forget because they want to destroy your character. They're not appreciative. These are the ones who indulge in the chaos, and the chaos is fun to live in for a little while, but man, you can't stay there forever. Although we do know people, and I'm sure we all know people who live in the chaos, and they're just chaotic souls, and you recognize them this way. So, even if you don't believe in a God, it's fine. Mass movements can spread without belief in a God. You don't have to aim it at something like that. But what you do have to do is create a devil, even if one doesn't exist. Who's our enemy? Them. Who are they? Don't worry about it. I'll tell you later. But let's go protest first. Let's go riot first. I'll tell you who they are later. I don't know, man. The facts don't seem to fit this case. Doesn't matter, guys. Let's go do it. Don't worry. I'll explain it later. And trust me, it'll make sense if you just don't think about it. Okay, let's go. It's creating chaos. It's creating chaos. And chaos is never going to be a good thing. And it's one of the reasons that we have cities. Because nature seemed chaotic to us. Because you could just never tell when a bear was going to come out of nowhere. So then we build cities. But do cities make us better off? No, because now we know there aren't going to be any bears, but we don't know if there's going to be a robber. We don't know if there's going to be a bad person around the corner, though. So we live in that constant state. And by the way, this is something I know a lot of you guys recognize. As I'm reading, I think I've finished all the letters of introduction by now. And something that kind of a theme that persisted, and I see this persisting every year, by the way, as I teach. A lot of us want stability and security. We want a job they'll pay us so we can not have to worry about things, that we can have some level of security. And that's good. Build that security up in your life. But man, beware of the devils, because they're there somewhere. They're there somewhere. I mean, this is kind of the story of Adam and Eve, isn't it? Speaking of gods. Who of you guys know the story of Adam and Eve? Out of curiosity. Yeah, it's a deep story, man. It's not a simple story. Essentially, you've got the first person created, Adam. And this is fascinating, by the way. You've got Adam, and then he asks for a helpmate. So then God creates Eve. So now you've got these two. So does anybody know by any chance who the first person born was? His name was Cain. It was their first child. Anybody know what he's famous for?
Did he kill his brother?
Yeah, killing his brother. So the first human ever born, according to that religion, murdered their brother. So the first human ever who was born murdered somebody. There's a reason for that, man. That tells us something deep about us as human beings. But in any event, the story of Adam and Eve goes that Eve is wandering through the garden one day, and God has this perfect garden for the two of them, and tells them, you can eat of anything here except for this one tree, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And people oftentimes say, oh, it's the tree of knowledge. No, it's the tree of knowledge of good and evil. In other words, when you eat of that fruit, you're going to know what's good, and you're going to know what's evil. And so the serpent kind of shows up and asks Eve, so God said you can eat of anything here, huh? There's a lie. God didn't say that. God didn't say you can eat of anything here. He said you can eat of anything except for that one tree. And so Eve corrects him and says, eat of anything except for that one tree. And then the snake goes, that attempt to create chaos out of order didn't work. Because remember, the garden, for a garden to be a garden, it's got to be perfect order. You got to have everything irrigated just right. The plants have to be just right. It's difficult to cultivate a garden. And so this garden is perfect, so it's a well-ordered place for them to live. And the serpent comes along to try to introduce chaos into that order. And then the serpent then asks, did God really say that, though? Trying to, again, take order, take what exists, which is truth, and try to create disorder out of it by introducing lies and doubts. And then Eve says, yeah, he said that. And it's interesting in this story, because you wonder, where's Adam? Adam's the one who asked for a helpmate. Why is he not there? Why is he not talking to the serpent himself? Why is it that Eve is left out there by herself? And then finally he says, okay, yeah, he said it, but let me tell you why, though. Because on the day that you eat of that tree, you're going to know good from evil, and you're going to be just like God. With an asterisk. You're not going to be him. You're going to be kind of like him in that one very small sliver, which is that you're going to know good from evil. In other words, you're going to know what chaos and order are. And so Eve is like, whoa, I'm going to be God? Yeah, something like that. Yeah, go ahead, eat it. So then she eats it, and all of a sudden she realizes, uh-oh, this is bad. And so what does she do? Try this. And Adam's like, all right. So then he tries it because, we're stupid. We do stuff like that. And then at that point they realize, oh man, we've made a big mistake. And they recognize that they're naked. Why? Why naked? Why does that matter? Because then they recognize their own vulnerability. Before that, they never realized that they were vulnerable because they didn't know evil. They only knew good. And so once they ate of this tree, now they knew that there was good in the world and there was evil in the world. And once you recognize that there's evil in the world and you're vulnerable, you recognize that you're vulnerable to the evil. And what's the evil that they were not aware of before?
Lust.
What's that?
Is it lust?
No. There was a serpent in the garden. The garden was perfect, except for there was a serpent in the garden. Do you know why I talk to you guys the way that I talk to you?
No.
Because there are serpents in the garden. That's why. Because I can sit here and tell you everything is beautiful and wonderful and great and nice. But that's not true, because I know there's a serpent in the garden. I can't go around the world and say, let me go take care of all the serpents and get rid of them. That way you'll be perfectly safe. Because there's serpents in the garden. That's why it is, man. And you guys will, I don't know, any of you guys take care of little nieces and nephews, brothers, sisters? Guys, do you worry about them in the future? You should. I don't mean that to scare you. I mean that because it's true. Why should you be worried about them? Because no matter how much you protect them, no matter what garden you create for them, no matter how perfect everything is that you do for them, some way, somehow, there will be a serpent in the garden. And you can't do anything about that. All you can do is prepare yourself for the serpents that you're going to encounter, because you're going to encounter serpents in your life. No one can go through the world and get rid of all of the serpents, all of the things that are going to come into your life and create chaos and disorder. But what you can do is prepare yourself for the serpents when you encounter them. That's what I'm always trying to do with you guys, to prepare you for the serpents. Because the serpents are going to show up in my context. Serpents are going to show up and tell you things like, so you can eat of any tree here, huh? No, in school I learned how to closely read and how to pay attention to what people say specifically. So I know that what you're telling me right now is not true. That's a lie. But I mean, did he really say that? Was that really what the person said? Yes, I read closely and I paid attention. I woke up and I paid attention to what people said and I believed what people said. In other words, when someone tells you that they're evil, believe them. When someone tells you they're going to do something, take their word for it first. So I know that, yeah, they said that. But that's not true, though. No, yeah, it really is, because I've thought about this, so I'm not easily swayed. I have an opinion about something, but it's a deep opinion about something, because I don't just have a feeling. I have a belief. I have reasons. And then, therefore, the serpent will not be able to shake you in that area. But there are other serpents. There are other gardens. And we're not in a garden anymore, which should tell you there's not just one serpent. There's lots of them, man. I hope you guys are ready, because that's how you get people to be angry and hate other people. Convince them that they're the serpent. Convince them that that person over there is the devil. And it'll make sense if you don't think about it. But man, think about it. Otherwise, you're just going to be used by mass movements. Questions? Comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms?